Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, and we give you a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And in today's episode, the topic is, are the Lakers good enough to repeat? So that's the topic I want to get into today's video. But before we get into that, I want you guys to please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Also, be sure to check out our Dreamerspro podcast, which is linked in the description below. So with that being said, let me just get straight into this topic here. Now, I'm sure some of you people watching this video that have probably seen videos from our channel will probably be saying, "What? He's doing a video on the Lakers? What? Why?" But I can talk about the Lakers. It's really not a big deal for me to talk about the Lakers. So I figured, hey, let's do that. And let's see how this video goes. Let's see how well it's received. So first of all, I think it's a legitimate question to ask, given the fact that most of the big moves in free agency have sort of taken place. Now, granted, some things could happen. Like some moves could be made that are probably unforeseen, that are unexpected, and there's always that can always take place. Like for instance, yesterday. It all depends on when you're seeing this video, but yesterday, the Houston Rockets were able to sign DeMarcus Cousins, which I had no idea was coming out. So they were able to make that move. But let's look at the Lakers and see really what are their chances really to be able to repeat, or actually are they good enough to repeat? So first of all, let's talk about their title run last season. The biggest thing that needed to happen for the Lakers in order to actually have a legitimate shot of winning the title, apart from having a good front office and all of this, was them being able to acquire Anthony Davis, because LeBron was there the year before and things didn't go well. They didn't make the playoffs. A lot of that had to do with the players he was playing with were not that experienced. Number two, he had an injury. The injury bug hit him, and it just wasn't a good season. They didn't make the playoffs, and it showed you that in the NBA, you need talent to win. You need really good talent to be able to go out there and win. So they didn't make the playoffs the first season. They were able to get Anthony Davis, and all of a sudden, once they got AD, some other chips started falling. I guess other players in the NBA looked at the team and say, hey, listen, this team has a legitimate shot to win the title. So they were able to pick up a lot of good pieces like Rajon Rondo, Avery Bradley, and some other guys. Danny Green signed for them for 2 years for $15 million, for $30 million for 2 years, I believe it was. So if I remember properly, so they were able to get some good pieces, right? And to be fair, they were able to hold on to the number one seed in the Western Conference. All of last season, I think they made it their goal to say, hey, listen, we're going to go out there and we're going to try to get the number one seed to really solidify ourselves as being the top dog in the Western Conference, but also to go out there and make sure to get home court advantage all throughout the Western Conference playoffs. Now, home court advantage plays a role, but not always. Excuse me. For example, the San Antonio Spurs have won championships on the road. So many teams have won championships on the road. I believe even the Toronto Raptors a few seasons ago, when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, they were playing on the road against the Milwaukee Bucks, and they came back and won that series. So championships can be won on the road, and it's not always the number one seed that always wins the championship, although it does help to have that home court advantage. Given the fact, however, that this season was the pandemic season, and in the playoff bubble, although the Lakers had the number one seed, and there was no such thing as home court advantage, there were no fans, there was no traveling. So nevertheless, what happened? They went to the NBA, the bubble. The biggest sort of rival to the Lakers all last season, at least that's how it was built up to be, was supposed to be the Clippers, and there was a lot of drama when these two teams faced. The first two meetings, the Clippers took the first two games. Then the Lakers ended up tying up the season series, taking the next two games, winning the final game in the bubble, which they were able to win. So that was really good, and it looked like they were going into the playoffs with some good momentum. And they just were able to continue to win series in the playoffs. First round, I think they played against the I think it was the Houston Rockets, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure, but they beat the Houston Rockets. Then they ended up beating the Denver Nuggets, and pretty much, given the fact that they were able to beat the Denver Nuggets, I believe it was in 5 games, and the Clippers lost to the Denver Nuggets in 7 games. I think a lot of people said, hey, listen, this is truly the best team, because listen, if they were able to beat the Nuggets, the team that beat the Clippers, then they're absolutely the best team, right? So they beat the Nuggets, and they ended up getting to the NBA Finals, where they played against a shorthanded Miami Heat. And nevertheless, the Miami Heat made it an interesting series. Jimmy Butler was just, out of this world. Had probably the best finals game I've ever seen him have. I think it was in game 5, I believe it was. And they went out there and they were able to capture the title in 6 games. So they won their title, and it was impressive. Anthony Davis had a good run. Now, if you look at the numbers of their leaders last season, LeBron James had a stellar season. He made all first NBA team, all NBA first team. He averaged 25.3 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 10.2 assists, basically led the entire league in assists for the first time in his career, which is astonishing. Anthony Davis got 26.1 points, 9.3 rebounds, 3.2 assists. So the two stars really showed up in the playoffs. LeBron, I think his production went up to 27.6 points per game, got you 1.2 steals, 8.8 rebounds. No, excuse me, 8.8 assists, 10 rebounds per game. So he 56% from the field. So LeBron James's numbers went up. And there's no surprise to that because LeBron James is a Pantheon great, as I said before. Some people argue he's the best greatest player ever played. I definitely say he's one of the top 10, top 5 greatest players of all time. Some people want to argue back and forth. That's really up to you. So he had a fantastic show, and Anthony Davis also did his thing, averaging 26 points per game, getting you 1.5 steals, 2.3 blocks, 3.2 assists, 9.3 rebounds, shooting 50% from the field. So the stars really showed out. And granted, although they beat a really short-handed Miami Heat, their playoff scoring leader in Goran Dragic, I hope I said his name properly, was unavailable. So, but nevertheless, they were still able to come out there and get the win. And kudos to them because they remained the most focused. I picked the Clippers all throughout the regular season, even going into the playoffs. But some strange things happened with them. Paul George just disappeared mentally, and his game went with him. Kawhi Leonard had his worst Game 7 performance of all time, probably his worst career performance ever. And they just seemed like disinterested. It seemed like there were so many issues with that team. And they ended up losing prematurely. I thought these two teams were going to meet in the Western Conference Finals. Apparently that didn't happen. So, given the fact that their season is over and they won the title, we now have to ask the question going into next season because, this video is being produced on November 24th. So depending on when you see this video, the NBA season training camp starts on December 1st and the regular season starts on December 22nd. So the season is just under a month away from getting started. So the question is, will they be able to repeat? Now let's look at some of the offseason acquisitions that they had and some of the players that they lost. So they lost Dwight Howard, to me, who's a three-time Defensive Player of the Year, who was really pivotal in that Denver Nuggets series with really being able for them to have bodies to throw at Nikola Jokic, who was just able to just pretty much outshine Montrezl Harrell and Ivica Zubac for the Clippers. So they lost to Dwight Howard, who's an integral part of their defense, their defensive anchor, probably the best defensive big. Some people may argue it's Anthony Davis. I think Dwight Howard is a little bit better. Then they lost Rajon Rondo, who was their third best player in the playoffs, and a real difference maker. He ended up going to play with the Atlanta Hawks, and Dwight Howard ended up to go play with the Philadelphia 76ers. Avery Bradley walked, but to be fair, he never even showed up to the bubble because of personal family issues. Decided not to go because, listen, hey, I don't want to put my child at risk, his newborn baby at risk, from contracting this illness, so he didn't show up. And Danny Green left the team. He ended up walking. Now, in return, however, they were able to keep KCP. He's there. They acquired Dennis Schroeder, I hope I'm saying his name properly, to replace Rajon Rondo. They got Montrezl Harrell, which seemed to be the biggest shocker of the free agency acquisition bubble market. That was one that really shocked a lot of us. They were able to pick and they also lost JaVale McGee. They were able to pick up a good replacement for JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard and Marc Gasol. Now, he's a little bit long in the tooth, but he's a fantastic defender, very smart, has a lot of size to him, very crafty, like his brother Pau Gasol. And he's a champion, so he has championship experience. He won his first ring with the Toronto Raptors 2 seasons ago. And they were able to pick up a defender in Wesley Matthews, who's a slightly bigger player than Avery Bradley. Great defender, great size, great physicality. So they're able to pick him up. So essentially, the Lakers were able to replace all of the pieces in which they lost, and they picked up the sixth man of the year in Montrezl Harrell, right? So the question is, did they get better? On paper, it looks like the Lakers got better, to be quite honest with you. Now, that's assuming that these players, specifically Dennis Schroeder and Marc Gasol and these guys, are able to make up for what losing Dwight Howard and Rajon Rondo. That's really the question, because these guys were difference makers for the Lakers in the playoffs. So there are going to be two grades we're going to look at. There's a superficial grade that we can give them on its face, looking at what they've done to their roster, assuming how they'll perform in the regular season. Yes, you can look at the acquisitions, look at the roster, and say, listen, they got better. Anthony Davis got better. His confidence got better, I'm sure, and he's probably going to get better. So although LeBron got a little bit older, but let's just assume he stays the same. If he drops off, maybe, let's say maybe a small percentage, in his drop off because of age, right? So I would assume they got better because of the supporting cast that they got and the momentum that they got from winning the title. So on its face, I think the Lakers are good enough. Yes, I think they're good enough to repeat. Can they repeat? I think it remains to be seen, because remember, games have to be played, right? Can they repeat is a completely different thing. Are they good enough? Absolutely. Because last season, a lot of us thought the Clippers were going to win. At least I did, and so many others. Did they win? No. So you actually, are you good enough to win? Absolutely. Will you win? Well, it comes down to the games, and will you play them, and will you be able to go out there and perform? So for me, I think they're definitely good enough to repeat. So listen, what I want to know from you guys is very simple. Number one, do you think the Lakers are good enough to repeat? Yes or no? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Also, we're going to link our most controversial video that we've ever done about Montrezl Harrell going to go sign with the Lakers, which is probably the most polarizing video we've ever done. So if you guys haven't seen it, a lot of people had a lot to say. That video has well over 1,000 comments already, so you guys can definitely check that out. We're going to link that in the end of this video right here. You should be seeing it on your screen. Make sure you go watch that video. Once again, thank you guys for your attention, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.